All right, let's get this party started, baby. It is growth time, and it is your time for growth time. So hopefully you had a great Easter weekend, and what a great talk today about redefining faith, the power of risk coming off Easter weekend. So I'm excited to share. Faith is one of those concepts that is so vital and important in my life and how I've redefined it and defined it. And it is awesome. And so I want to share with you really three things today. One is going to be a modern day analogy on how faith works. Two is going to be some Jesus stories. Coming out of Easter, a couple of Jesus stories to really explain how faith really works in our life and the impact it can have. And three, I got a challenge for you, like how to move forward, what that looks like for your journey in life. So taking this all in, faith redefined, you got to understand that there is an enemy out there. Yes, we are fighting the enemy of fear. Fear is that number one limiting belief. Limiting belief is any belief that restricts, prohibits, prevents us from growing and moving forward into possibilities, outcomes. It is the number one enemy. And the way to attack it and the way to overcome that is with the empowering belief of faith. Yes, faith. But too often it's broad. It's not defined. Our mindset around faith isn't clear. So we're not really impactful. We're not really strong in how to combat the fear when it comes at us. So I'll start with the modern day analogy. I love sports, love basketball. So we're going to work with the basketball concept here. And in that, you have a coach of a team. Coach oversees the team. The players, they have to have faith in the coach. The coach is leading, directing, guiding, overseeing the whole journey and the goals and the visions of that team. So the team has to exhibit faith in the umbrella part of being under the coach. But yet that player actually has to get in the game of life, get on the court. They have to play the basketball game. And in that player has choice. He's going to choose how he plays. So their mindset is important in how they approach the game. They can have that mindset of fear, or they can have that mindset of faith. That mindset of fear will want to say, what can I lose? What is going to go wrong? I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to get it right. And the mindset of faith says, here's what we're going to go gain. Here's where we're going to go win. Here's how we're going to go conquer. So if there's opposing ways that people, and we show up on the court, the player shows up on the court. And in that choice, they're either going to choose fear or faith. And faith is closely linked to this word I love to use, risk. So faith is going to be linked to risk. So let's look at a couple scenarios for that player. In the worst case scenario, you ever coach club sports or basketball at a young age, you've seen that 5-year-old grab the ball, defenders come around, and he just shrinks and huddles up and holds that ball so tight. And he's so afraid to let go. He's so afraid of the defenders. He's just sit there stuck grabbing that ball. That's the worst case scenario. And that's the theme for sometimes how life is and how we approach it. On the other spectrum, you have that player who comes out with confidence. He takes risks. He's passing the ball. He's cutting. He's shooting. He's being aggressive. He's really trying to score the basketball. He's really trying to score the ball, like get buckets. And that's the concept I want you to think about with faith. On the court, a player has to play offense. If we're going to be effective, if the player is going to win, they're going to have a mindset that overcomes, that takes control, that's assertive, and has a vision of what's to be gained, and then go play offense. So faith is about taking that risk on the basketball court. It's about taking that risk to move the ball into the hoop. So faith is about playing offense. I'll give you a parallel version of this, which I think could be real helpful. So the parallel that, when you break down, even think about the Easter story about God and faith, is that God is that coach. And I've perpetuated that journey a little bit in people's thinking with this growth time vision. God is the great growth coach. He's got an awesome player coach, like a liaison between the people on the team and the head coach himself, and that's Jesus. You can look at the assistant coaches on the team as being a form of the Holy Spirit. They provide some support, some guidance, but yet there's this team concept. And in that, we as people have to have faith, if we're on his team, that he's overseeing, he's protecting, he's guiding, he's that source over our lives. And that's good. But really what's going to help move the journey forward in your relationship with God, what's going to help move your vision, your goals forward, is when faith in the context is looked at taking risk and getting out of that place of just saying it's an overarching theme of my relationship with God, but I'm willing to take risks, steps of faith towards that God, towards that relationship. So hopefully you can think about framing it that way. And we're going to share two stories. I call them Jesus stories because they really show the impact of faith and risk and the link and the result, the change, the transformation, the power that happens when we take risks and we get out of that proverbial boat, right? We've heard that saying before. You just got to get out of the boat. And it couldn't be more true when we're thinking about how to overcome the limiting belief of fear and walk in faith and move forward with our goals, our visions, our dreams, and in that relationship with the Lord himself. So the story I'll share is in Matthew chapter 14 for the Bible scholars, and it is a story about Peter and the disciples. So I'll set the framework. There is a major storm, and the disciples are in this boat. They're going across the sea. Jesus isn't with them. And the waves, the storms, it is pounding that boat, and they're afraid to the point of death. And in that, they see Jesus coming out to them. Peter has a choice here. He takes that thought of, man, if this is really Jesus, let me see if I can go out to him, because it's probably a lot better with him than it is in this boat. Maybe Peter was tired of being so afraid in that boat and concerned and afraid that he may die in that boat. He was willing to take that risk and get out and go towards something different, go towards something new, go towards Jesus. So he takes that step out. Christ calls him out. He takes out that step, which is humongous to think about that risk he took. And yet he starts walking on water. He starts doing the impossible. And as he takes those steps, if you know the story, he starts to falter. He starts to take his eyes off the Lord, and he starts to sink. And in that mercy, Jesus stretches forth his hand. He stretches it out, snatches Peter, brings him in the boat, shuts down the waves, shuts down the storm, shows he has authority over all circumstances and adversity in their lives, and brings peace. But what's really interesting is Peter's journey. He got out of that boat. What if he just stayed in there? Would that have happened? Would things have shifted and changed? What would have taken place? But Peter took that step of faith. He took that risk and he played offense to go out towards something from the land of fear into the land of faith. Now, here's the second story I'd like to share. It is the story of a man with a withered hand. So this is actually in Mark chapter 3. And this is interesting because this man has a hand that's withered. We don't know what it's from. We don't know whether it's from birth, a defect, or maybe he was in accident or injury. But that hand is just withered up, decrepit, not functional, not working. And Jesus is in the synagogue teaching and talking. And you love his leadership because he's willing to stand up and confront the leaders of the day. And he creates all this different change and shift in how people are perceiving him and his ministry and his work. And this man with the withered hand, we're going to focus on him because he's got a choice. He's got a choice either to play by fear or take steps of faith and live by risk. We're going to see a crazy outcome. So in the story, Jesus calls forth this man. He says, stand up. Come forth. Come on. So right there, this man has a choice. He could stay afraid because he's risking his connection with his community, his perception among the leaders and the elders. He may be ostracized by his family because he's standing up and heeding the voice of this Jesus leader. But yet, he's not operating in fear. He's willing to get out of that zone, not be limited, and take this step of faith. So he stands up. Jesus looks around, has a few words for the religious leaders. He's frustrated, upset of their hard hearts and their unbelief. But yet he says to the man, stretch forth your hand. Now this is where it can get interesting. This man has a choice here. Like we all have this choice. He possibly could have just stretched forth his good hand. Hey, I need to be picked up. I need to be carried. Here's my good hand. Hey, here's me on social media. Here's me on Facebook. Let me show you all the good that I can do and I am. But the man doesn't do that. He's willing to be vulnerable. And oh, how we need that if we are going to move out of fear and into faith and into risk. He's willing to be vulnerable with his weakness. He's willing to be vulnerable with his brokenness. He's willing to show everybody, which may have been like a scarlet letter and a black mark of showing his weakness, and he sets it out there and he stretches forth his hand. And at that moment, in that risk of being completely transparent and vulnerable, the Lord does it. He does the impossible and he restores this man's arm. And so what a great story. What could we glean and learn from it is that when we get out of our boat, when we take steps of faith and take risks and play offense, anything's impossible with God. Everything's possible. And then when we're willing to be vulnerable and transparent and say, here's my weakness. I may be afraid, I may be unsure, but here's my weakness. We allow God's space to do the impossible. And so that's the journey. If we're going to really redefine faith, we have to have two frameworks to view it. The overarching theme and concept, which most people would agree, there's a God, there's a bigger picture, there's a higher power. We have to exhibit some kind of faith or understanding that he's in control. And that's good. But what great looks like is when we decide to move past the concept of religion, being empowered in a relationship, and get into that world of taking steps of faith, taking risks, and overcoming our fear, overcoming our limitations. That's the journey we all face. That's the journey you're facing. That's the journey you have to move towards. And so my hope, my challenge is, after the Easter week, many people think about God more. It's kind of like that topic of fitness. I worked 20 years in the fitness industry, and when I basically was around people who didn't know what I did, when I mentioned I worked in the fitness, it was confession time. I need to start working out. I need to get back. Oh, I really need to start eating better. Well, I don't usually eat like this. And many times we have that same thought when it comes to faith. Like, oh, I need to get back to it. I need to get into it. I need to get into that journey again. Yeah, that's important, but there's so many other things I need to get to. And that comes from a mind of umbrella thinking. That mindset will never truly set you free or move you forward. It's that relationship gets interesting with God. It gets powerful. It gets impactful when we take those steps of faith, when we play offense, when we want to go score, we want to put the ball in the hole. And so my challenge is take that journey. Think about this week, what steps of faith you could take to move you that much closer, to let go of yourself, be transparent, and move closer to the Lord. And then number 2 challenge, outside of God, outside of the faith, take a look at your own journey and say, where do I need to beat and destroy and conquer fear in my life? Fear of failure, fear of rejection. Where is that getting me stuck? Where is that putting me in a place of not being effective in my relationship, not being effective in my leadership, not really helping me expand my business or expand my territory or what I'm trying to move forward to? Because fear will restrain, it will control. It always has to do with loss. But yet redefining faith, understanding the umbrella, and then taking those steps of risk. And keep taking them. The only way to beat up on the enemy of fear is to continue to play a game of risk. Even where there's that sense of loss, or you might not achieve. It's better than staying stuck. It's better being dominated by fear. So get out of that boat, stretch forth your hand, have a great week, and remember, growth time is about growing your life, growing your faith, and growing you forward. Hopefully that helped. Hopefully that journey was impactful. But I said it's your time. It's growth time. Move forward in faith. Take steps of risk. It's going to be a great week.